Welcome to the video. In today's video, we are going to be breaking down the parable of the talents, and I'm basically going to do two things for you on today's video. I'm going to help you understand for yourself what the parable of the talents actually means, but also at the same time, I'm going to show you how this can be applicable to your life, how you can actually apply this, and what basically happens if you fall on the wrong side of the parable in today's video as well. So for those of you who are here for the first time watching one of our live streams or one of our videos, my name's Israel. What we basically focus here on the channel is two things: helping you learn the Bible for yourself, but also helping you apply it and live it out on a day-to-day basis. So without further ado, as is our custom, we love to jump into the Bible, jump into the scripture, and give you the context, give you the insights into what's basically happening in the Bible. Because ultimately, as Christians, this is our handbook, our guidebook through life to basically guide us through just the different experiences in life. And the parable of the talents is a really interesting one for a number of reasons. This is not the first parable we've basically done a video on. If you want more additional videos from us in regards to some of the different parables in the scriptures, I've linked in the description box some of the other ones we've done previously, and I've also linked the whole playlist as well. And also other videos that I may mention in today's video are likely going to be in the description box as well. Now, again, we can jump into this parable. It's a really interesting parable, a really good parable as well for a number of reasons. This is one of the parables that ultimately Jesus gives us a lot of context into. The parables which I personally believe are the best are the ones where Jesus, if not explains the parable explicitly or gives us some additional context to the parable that helps us understand specifically what the parable is actually trying to say. So let's jump into the parable. We can start off, and as we go through it, we can not only help you understand the Bible, like I said, but I'm also going to give you a personal example today, which I think is really vital, and it'll be really beneficial for you to see that this applies to everyone. This can apply to everyone. There's no one like exempt from this, so it's really important that you actually pay close attention. So the parable of the talents is taken from the Gospel of Matthew, right? And as you can see here, right before this parable, there's another parable which is referenced commonly as the foolish virgins, or the 10 virgins, right? Now, subsequently after that parable, Jesus gets into this parable, and he basically starts by talking about how the kingdom of heaven is like a man, okay, traveling into a far country. Now, again, you can see this right here to start. This is how he sets it up. He talks about this guy going into a far country, and he called a group of his own servants and delivered unto them his goods, right? So the guy is going. Why is this significant? This is significant because what Jesus was teaching his disciples at this time is, look, I'm about to go. I'm going to get crucified. I'm going to die. I'm going to rise again on the third day, and then ultimately I'm going to heaven. So in the context of what Jesus is actually saying, he's saying, look, I'm going. I'm delivering my goods to my servants, right? And when you think about it from that perspective, what do we see next? We see a distribution of talents. Now, this is powerful for a number of reasons. Okay, when you really think about what happens next, he says he gave unto one person 5 talents, to another he gave 2 talents, and to another person he gave 1 talent. He gave to every man according to his several ability, and straightway he took his journey. So there's a couple of things really insightful I think we should unpack here. Notice that people were given different talents. One got 5, one got 2, one got 1. And it says in this parable, Jesus is saying, look, it came down to the person's ability. Now, why is this powerful? This is powerful for a number of reasons. One thing I feel that's dropping in my spirit right now is Jesus gave everyone in this parable, right, this example, what they were able to bear, what they were able to manage. Okay, so he didn't give one person more than he could have, okay, to start. He didn't give another person less than he should be able to manage. Everyone was given a certain valuation, a certain level. And what does it say next? The key word in everything I've read so far, which I think is powerful, is this right here: straightway. So he gave these gifts, okay, and basically went straight away. Okay, random wingman, how's it doing? How's it doing? So imagine this: he basically delivered the goods and went. He didn't stay around, he just went. And what does he say next? He said, then he that had received the 5 talents went and did what? He went and traded with the same. So he traded with the 5 talents that he had. He used his resource. And what did he do? He duplicated it. He made double, right? He had what he took what he had and made another amount of that. And what does it say? And likewise, he that 2, what did he do? He gained 2 as well. So he doubled his possessions. Now, as we continue, what does it say? It says, but he that had received 1, he went and digged in the earth and hid his Lord's money. So he didn't do like the other 2 in this example. He basically took his 1 talent and basically hid it in the ground. He didn't do anything of substance with it. Now, from just a basic level, when we look at this, okay, we can easily start to begin to draw conclusions from the scenario. As we continue to go down, I want you to understand certain things. Why? Because at the end of the day, what do we see? We see that one thing I've mentioned already, that in this example, Jesus gave to everyone according to their ability, right? And because he gave to everyone according to their ability, what does that mean? That basically means that there was no one that can turn around and say, you know what? The work you gave me was too much. From the starting point, everyone had what they were able to manage. So when you think about this, just from a basic level, the things that you have in your life today, the things that God's entrusted you with, the gifts that you have, the talents that you have, they are sufficient for you from a starting point. Some of us will lose some of our talents, or some of us will bury some of our talents. Some of us will execute with our talents and do more. But the fact of the matter is, whether we execute and we acquire more talents and continue to do more, or whether we hide our talents in the sand, we all started on a level playing field, respectively, relative, right? Now, why is this significant? It's significant for a number of reasons, but notice, who gave the talents? Jesus gave the talents, right? In the parable, the guy that's traveling into a far country, he gave the talents. He's the one that did that, right? So again, another conclusion you can draw so far from the parable is what? That everyone in this scenario got something from Jesus. It was distributed to everyone. Enough for you to be sufficient with to actually provide something. It wasn't a little bit to start, which you couldn't do anything with. He gave everyone a sufficient amount in order to make the decision that they wanted to make. Am I going to utilize this and actually reproduce talents, or am I going to just waste it and do nothing with it? Okay. Now, why is this significant? Let's keep reading and see more of the context, okay? Because context is always going to be vital. What does he say? After that, we see that after all of these people did what they did with their talents, right, to start, what does it say? It says, after a long time, this is powerful right here, after a long time, right? No one can turn around and say, you know what, God, you didn't give me enough time. God gives everyone enough time. The Lord of those servants did what? He came, and he reckoneth with them. So he's basically now looking at them and saying, look, I'm back now to take an account of what you did. What did you do with your talents? Did you utilize it? Did you not utilize it? Like, give me a report. And what happens? So he that received five talents came and did what? He came and brought his other 5 talents, saying what? Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents more. So what does the Lord, the guy who went on a far journey and spent a long time on that far journey and has now returned to basically take an account, what does he say? He says, well done, good and faithful servant. Okay. Now this is powerful. Why? He says, you have been faithful over a few things. I will make you a ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord. So he passed with flying colours. Then likewise, we heard about 5 to start. Then we're going to hear about 2 now. The person who had 2 talents, right? He also that had received 2 talents came and said, in like manner, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. And behold, I have gained 2 other talents beside them. So in like manner, he's duplicated, like we alluded to previously, right? And what does the Lord say? His Lord said unto him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord. So, same scenario. Now notice this, something I feel the Lord's dropping on me right now, which I think is even significant, just to kind of give you the context as we walk through this, right? The guy who had 5 talents, or the person who had 5 talents, and the person who had 2 talents, the Lord said the same thing to both people. What did he say? You have been faithful. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord. So notice, you had the same task relative to your ability to start. You both got reward. You now both get well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over many things. You've been faithful over a few things. I'll make you ruler over many things. Enter you into the joy of the Lord. They both got these 3 commendations. Now remember, the last example here in the parable was the servant who had 1 talent, and he went to hide his in the ground. Now, what does the Lord say in this scenario? Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art an hard man. Let me read that again. Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art an hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. Now, why is this interesting? We talked about this previously. Another reason why this is significant is because it shows you from the outset that, look, the person that's being judged here is about to be judged, is conscious. This wasn't someone who didn't know this was going to happen. What happened though? This is an example. Let me show it to you, right? What does he say? Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, what? Lord, I knew. This wasn't someone who didn't know. This was someone that knew what was going to come if he messed around with his talent. And what did the Lord say? He said, the guy says he was afraid, and he went and hid his talent in the earth. And he says, Lo, thou hast thine. So he says he was afraid, so he went to hide it in the earth, and he's like, Lo, look here, take it. Here it is. So what did the Lord say? His Lord answered and said unto him, Wicked and slothful servant. Notice the contrast. We're going from, let's go up a little bit. We are going from good and faithful servant to what? Wicked and slothful servant. Now, what was the difference? What was the difference between the first 2 and this person? The difference was that this servant took the talent that he was given and didn't do anything. He basically threw it in the ground, right? Buried it in the ground and just left it there. Whereas the other 2 were actually doing things. There's an underlying message that I want to give to you through this parable as well today. So to just bear in mind and keep that in your mind. There's an underlying message that Israel wants to give to me today. I think it's going to be really significant. But the more and more we go through the parable, it will help you. And again, like I said, there's going to be an example, personal example that I want to explain and get into more detail. So it's not just a theoretical kind of study. I always like to do things theoretically, but also add a practical element in as well. So you can actually have an actionable step here in regards to that, right? So the fact of the matter is, he says, you knewest that I reap where I sowed not, and gather where I have not strawed. And he says, thou oughtest, therefore, to have put my money to the exchanges. So he says, look, you should have just at least just ultimately like taken my money to the exchanges. Why would that have been of benefit, at least? Because he says, and at my coming, I should have received mine own with usury. So basically, usury is just a olden English word for interest. We'd reference here as interest today. So Jesus is basically saying through the parable, what would have even been better for you is, even if you weren't actually going to actively handle the talent that I gave you, what would have even been better is if you just put it in the bank, basically, and allowed them to basically give you interest. Why is that significant? Because it shows you that even like a little bit would have been enough. Even if you just did a little bit with your talent, even if you just had a little produce with your talent, it still would have been sufficient. But one of the messages I feel Jesus is preaching and teaching with this parable is, there's people out there that don't even care even a little bit. They're not even interested in producing even just a little bit. They're so wicked and slothful in this scenario, in this context of this parable, that they don't even care. They're just going to coast ultimately. There's not going to be even a little bit of increase. Now, how does he tie off the first part of this parable? He says something really interesting. He says, for unto everyone that has, right, shall be given. So everyone that has something will be given, and he shall have abundance. So not only are you going to have from what you have, you are going to have abundance. Why? Because they were faithful with what they had, right? But from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath. So notice what happens. If someone gives you the talent and you don't do anything with it, you basically waste the talent. That talent you have will be taken from you and will be given to another person. And what does he say? And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Okay. Now, some people feel like it ends here. For some people, this is enough. But in some contexts, it does kind of end here. But he continues going, giving and adding further context, which is actually significant and is really powerful if you continue reading. But notice what happens. All right. When you think about this whole scenario, this is really powerful. Before we basically jump into the next like part of this parable and we start to unpack it and give you just additional context and give you additional insights to what's actually happening here. The reason this is significant is because, as Jesus so nicely explained, everyone is given a talent. Now, generally what we like to do is we can basically look at this from a physical perspective. God gives everyone physical gifts, physical abilities, physical attributes, physical characteristics. And what do we do with those physical attributes? Do we utilize them and garner more reward, more talents? Or do we squander them? Do we misuse them? Do we act in negligence and inappropriately handle them, incorrectly handle them? And ultimately, not only stop ourselves from producing, but we also, for God's kingdom that is, we also suffer loss. Because the way Jesus tied it out in the end was, or tied it up in the end was, he said, look, those that are given will have and have more and have abundance, right? But those that don't, okay, shall be taken away even that which he has. Now, why is this significant? The reason I say this is because we all know in life, right, we've got things that we know we're supposed to do. We know we've got giftings in certain ways. It doesn't, and one thing I'll say to you, it doesn't always mean that the thing that you are most skilled in is the thing that is your talent. It's not always like that. Why? Because sometimes you can train yourself to be very, very skilled at something. And that might even illuminate where your actual talent is because you're not refining it. You're not actually actively utilizing it. Okay. And this is significant for a number of reasons. But the point is, Going back to the beginning of the parable, what did Jesus outline? He outlined that, look, everyone was given to their ability. You can't say, well, this person had more than me, or this person had less than me. Why? Because it was all relative. Everything was relative, and it was clear that everything was relative because everyone got the same reward. Enter into the joy. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with this, you will actually get more. Some person can say, well, why didn't I get 5 talents instead of 2 talents? Well, Jesus outlines it for you. The reason you didn't get 5 talents to start is because you wouldn't be able to handle 5 talents. And if I give you 5 talents, then it wouldn't be just for me to punish you in the end when you haven't done anything. Okay? This is how we get some people that are strong. That's how we get some people that are weak. But the fact of the matter is, the strong are supposed to take care of the weak. The strong are supposed to lift the weak up and help them. You don't go around and you see a weak person and you say, look, this weak person should now go and help the strong person. No, it doesn't work like that. The strong person needs to help the weak person. Why do I say this? Let's get into some of the practicalities now, right? So everyone knows, okay? For those people out there that will say, well, I don't know what God wants me to do, or like God doesn't speak to me, or how do I know what my calling is? We've done multiple videos on these kind of things, how to draw closer to God. That's in the description box. You can consider watching that after the live stream. We've done a video on how to know your calling and to complete it. That's if on our channel. You can go back if you're on the search for the how to complete my calling in God and just type in that word. It should come up. We've done multiple videos about these kind of things that will help you like draw closer to God and really start to see how God is speaking to you in so many different ways. For some of you, this video today is a way that God's using to talk to you, because maybe for whatever reason, maybe the other reasons, you feel like God hasn't spoken to you, you're ignoring them, or for whatever reason, right? But the fact of the matter is, these are the things that make it justifiable at some point in the future where God comes back and says, look, it's time to give an account. I've gone on a long journey, as Jesus said. I'm coming back to now give an account, to take an account from you. And what are we going to say in that scenario? Are we going to say, well, God, I know you gave me 5 talents and you know what? Like, I really didn't do anything with them. I just made sure I preserved them. I just coasted. I lived day to day, right? Now, again, some people are going to have different talents. Don't focus on other people. Focus on yourself. We did a live stream a couple of weeks ago about a scripture in John. It was highlighting a conversation Jesus had with Peter. Definitely recommend you go back on our channel and basically watch it. It really helps you understand why we shouldn't be focusing on other people, other Christians, other people. Why is so and so going through this, or why is so and so blessed in this way? That's irrelevant. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, the underlying thing I want you to realize is that you have to think about this from a different perspective. Like, yes, don't think about other people. Think about yourself and understand that you will stand or fall based on how God judges you specifically, not on you looking at your neighbor or looking at someone else. Now, again, I said let's get into some practical examples. So what do I mean by that? Well, look, I started basically highlighting that there's different ways God talks to people. There's different ways like talents are distributed. And I want to give you a prime example, something I've actually mentioned about a month ago, just over a month ago, in a couple of live streams, in a couple of videos on the channel. I've linked them in the description box below, and it's really beneficial in regards to the context we're actually talking about. So one of the things I know I'm supposed to do, okay, I truly believe God wants me to write, right? I believe ultimately I'm supposed to teach, but writing is one of those avenues where I believe God wants me to do. Now, the fact of the matter is, a while ago, and this is what I mentioned in these videos that I talked about. One of them is write the vision and make it plain. Another vision is basically part 2, ultimately is what I kind of call it today, but it was basically what's happened since last week. That's what the title of that video is actually called. They're in the description box either way. But the fact of the matter is, when you think about what was basically happening in those scenarios, right, I was basically outlining and basically just explaining how years ago God had basically said to me, like, look, I want you to write some books. And what I basically did is, the first book I basically wrote, and ultimately, we do this. Ultimately, what you'll realize is that I wrote the book, got the book published, didn't do it accurately in the right way I should have, and I mentioned that in these videos. And then a couple or sometime later, a few years later, I ultimately basically did the book again in the way I believe God wanted me to do it initially. Now I had multiple books, but I ultimately, what did I do? I wrote some books, and basically for multiple years and years and years, what did I do? I ultimately buried it like the guy with one talent did. And the reason I can't say, well, literally what I did, which is kind of equivalent, is I basically just buried it in the ground. What I mean by that is the electronical world in the ground, right? It was just in my memory storage, and it just stayed there. At the time, I think I was talking about, it was 8 years ago, something along those lines. I actually think it's been about 10 years, right? But the fact of the matter is, what can I say? Imagine if time went on further and further and further, right? Imagine if I passed away and I'm looking at God and that, and God comes to me and says, you know what? Well, Israel, give me an account. And we start breaking down certain things, and he says, okay, cool. What about the books? How many books did you write that I told you to write? And I say, well, you know what? This book, Walk in the Spirit, I wrote that book, etc. Again, if you want a copy of that, it's in the description box as well, just for the record. You can get a paid version if you want to support me in that way. You can get a free version if you can't afford it, or if you don't want to pay but you still want the book and stuff like that. Either way, we can cater to multiple people in different situations, right? This is for God. This isn't ultimately for me. And this proves the point, like, this is more to the point, to prove the point what I'm talking about, right? If I turn around to God and I say, well, yeah, you know what, God, I wrote some other books, but I didn't ever publish them, you know. Like, what do you think God would say to me? Like, God would be just in regard to the books, right? This is just one example. There's loads of different examples. And God could say, look, well, I gave you these books to write. You even wrote some of the books, but you didn't even give them away, for example. You didn't even just give them away for free. So people could actually use them in that in regard. For the people that couldn't afford or didn't want to support you, whatever the reason is, you didn't give people those opportunities. And the reason this is significant is because what we're going to continue to read as we go down through the parable and add and see the additional context that Christ gives, it plays into these examples that I'm giving you now. But the fact of the matter is, this came a couple of days ago. I opened it yesterday, and this is basically the next book, right? This right here. And the reason I bring this up is for one reason. Because for 10 years, this book was just catching dust in a memory bank. And look, this is just a proof copy. This is the first proof copy, basically. You can even see it says, look, not for resale. But the fact of the matter is, some time ago, not long ago, I said, you know what? I've been burying a lot of my talent in the sand, just burying it in the ground. And if I continue in this manner, what do I think what's going to happen? Like, I could easily, in a lot of ways, turn out to be the guy who's just burying his talent in the sand. Why? Not because I'm special, but because I truly believe that God requires a certain level of me, not more than I'm able to manage. You can see that clearly from the parable, right? If I was not ever able to basically write a certain amount of books, God wouldn't have entrusted them to me. But if I'm actually not writing the books, that's the worst scenario. If I'm writing the books but not giving them out to people, that's a bad scenario too. The best scenario in this situation in regards to talents is you write the book, you get the book published one way, shape or form, but then you distribute it out in the way you believe God wants you to distribute it out. Now, again, we live in a day and age where there's so much access, there's so much ability. There's no more excuses on so many different levels. We can't say, well, only rich people or only famous people can get a book deal or can get published. We can publish books ourselves. We can't turn around and say, well, I don't know how to write a book. In this day and age, there's so many different ways you can put a book together. Okay. Now, the fact of the matter is, as I talk about this stuff, I want to just let you know that, just as is my custom, Okay. Just like I've already mentioned in regards today with Walk in the Spirit, one thing you can do is there's links in the description box for you to get this book as well. Obviously not for resale on it and stuff like that. It's a proper edition. Now, again, what I'll say to you is I'll show you right now. You can basically see this in real time, right? So first and foremost, let me do this. So let me show you first and foremost the first way you can get this, and I'll give you the links in the chat box, right? You can basically right here you can get the book for free. Okay, I give that out just because that's how I believe I'm supposed to do it. And also for those of you who want to pay for it, etc., okay, you can actually do it in that regard. Either way, I'm happy. Why? Because these are talents that God has given me, and God has empowered me in a way where I feel like, you know what, this isn't for me. This is for you. These are for the people that God wants me to serve and God wants me to impact. Why? Because I know if one person picks this book up and follows just one of the principles in the book, then that is me utilizing the talents that I have. Now, the reason, as you can see here, I'll just show you, for example, right? You can see here on screen, look, this is how you can actually get a free copy. You click the first link I put in the chat box, right? And it will basically take you to this page. You can basically download a free copy of the book. Why? Because at the end of the day, like I said, this is about you. This is about my talents. My talents will basically help people in different ways. And really, when you think about it, it's like all I have to focus on as a Christian, this is what we was talking about yesterday on the live stream. That was part 2 of just a short mini session we basically did on being holy, for God is holy. And the day before that was part 1. And even previously before that. But the point I'm trying to make is, when you think about all of this stuff, what's actually going on, right? As a Christian, we have to just focus on God. That's it. Why? Because imagine this is the book that God wants to use to, who knows, make me famous, or to allow me to acquire a lot of wealth. God knows. That's irrelevant. Why is that irrelevant? Because for 10 years, this book caught dust. This book didn't help anyone. This book didn't even help me. This book, I was allowing this to hinder me. Why? Because I didn't do anything with it. Apart from the people that I was able to help in the scenario, basically through formulating the book, right? It didn't do anything for 10 years. It caught dust. My talent was just basically catching dust. Now, why do I tell you about this? This isn't to sell your book. If I was trying to sell you a book, I wouldn't give it to you for free, right? The reason I tell you about this is because I want you to see over and over again that if God was only using perfect people, and this again, the 2-part series I did over the last 2 days, Be Ye Holy for I Am Holy, is powerful. It definitely adds a lot of foundation cement to what I'm basically talking about now in regards to trusting in ourselves, trusting in our own righteousness, trusting in ourselves for our own perfection in God's eyes. The reason I say this stuff is because ultimately you can see God doesn't use people that are perfect. If that was the case, God wouldn't be able to use anyone. The only person that is acceptable in God's eyes is Jesus. That's it. This is why we can believe in Jesus as our perfect sacrifice in God's eyes, and we can be saved through that. And we don't, or we shouldn't anyway, trust in ourselves and say, you know what, well, I believe in Jesus, but I'm working my way to heaven. No, we can't work our way to heaven because we're fallible. We continue to fall. We continue to falter. And God knows that. That's why God says, look, you know what, let me do the work for you. Remember what I said previously, the strong help the weak, right? The weak don't help the strong in that regard. So the reason I can give the book away is because, why? Because all of the things God's blessed me with, they were free. God gave them to me for free, right? And if I can distribute them to people for free, but knowing that, you know what, not everyone can afford to pay for a book. People are struggling financially, okay? We've got stuff about finance in here, which can help you financially. And this is ultimately, for those of you who don't know, this is 50 principles that can help you live a better life. Now, the fact of the matter is, these are all 50 principles from the Bible. I'm not trying to encourage you or motivate you to go somewhere else. Everything I try to model my life on is from the Bible. So everything I try to do hopefully has the Bible in it, one way, shape, or form. And this is no different. Now, the premise of this book is it ultimately helps people. It'll be ideal for you to learn these principles before 25, right? But the fact of the matter is, this can help you as long as you still have breath in your lungs and you still have capacity in your mind to think. Why? Because I still use this and I'm older than 25, right? As long as I'm breathing, the principles in here will continue to work. Why? Because they're not principles that run out. They're evergreen principles. They're principles from the Bible that stand the test of time. You could pick this book up in 50 years and still read it and still get a benefit. Okay? Why? Because these are principles from God. And God's principles stand the test of time. So you think about it from that perspective, the talents that you have, don't look at me and say, oh, you know what, because I'm listening to Israel on a live stream that he's this special guy. I'm just like you. In some areas, I fell miserably. I just gave you an example. I wrote a book about 10 years ago and I didn't do anything with the book. I just left it to catch dust. Even though I knew this book could actually benefit loads of people. I was reading some of the pages the other day and I was just saying to myself, although I know I wrote this 10 years ago, I was saying to myself, you know what, 10 years ago, you actually could write a little bit, couldn't you? And I was just, I guess they'd say you was feeling yourself a little bit. And it's not in a prideful way, because a lot of the time, when I look at things from the past that I've squandered, that I've messed up, I kind of look at it in a sense of regret to a certain degree. But I try not to put myself in condemnation, okay? Because I know I'm in Christ, so there's no condemnation in Christ, right? But I still don't just ignore the fact that, you know what I just did right now on a live stream gave you access to the book for free, and I gave you the opportunity to sow into me, okay, if you want to, not by obligation, right? I could have done that 10 years ago. There's things you could have did 10 years ago. You could have done 10 years ago, but you haven't. But what? What does that tell you? What am I trying to get you to understand? Don't just think because you buried your talent for 10 years, you can't go back to the ground and pull it up and basically start trading with it, as it talks about the guy that had 5 talents and the guy that had 2 talents. Why? We talked about this previously. I'll show you this again. What did it say? I highlighted this previously because I thought this was really significant. It said right here. Okay, not even there, actually. Let me show you this part first. The guy went away, right? Where did he go? The scripture says into a far country. So this is a long journey. That's the first thing. But the point I wanted to raise to you, which I thought was the significant part why I came back here, was what? This right here. After a long time. So imagine, when I think about stuff like what I'm talking about with you today, I realize just how gracious God is. Why? Because I've been sitting on my hands for 10 years in regards to this. I've been just allowing this talent to catch dust for 10 years. That's a long time. Some people are born in that time. I wrote this book before I had any children. I've got 3 children today. If you want to add some context to this. So this book really should have been out and publicized to the public for free, but also in a paid setting before I even became a dad. That gives you additional context. And the more and more we talk about these kind of things, there was people that died over the last 10 years. There were people, which is even worse, there were people that were born within the last 10 years and died within the last 10 years. Within that 10-year span, that's happened. Now, the reason I say this is powerful and the reason I thank God for this is because I could have died over the last 10 years. Okay? And I give God thanks that God has given me even more time to do what? To go to the burying place, the property, the soil, the land where I've buried many of my talents, and I can still have the time to raise them up and to start utilizing them. So you've still got time. There's things you've put on the back burner. There's things you've been ignoring. There's things that you know God wants you to do. Even if it's just as simple as I'm going to start praying to God today for God to give me additional insights into what the scripture actually says and how God wants to actually use me and utilize me ultimately, right? You still have time. You still have time for so many different things. Why is this significant? This is significant because, like I've already said, and I think this is a powerful lesson for you to understand, right? Even if it's 10 years later, God is deep. Why is God deep? Because what I've said up until now, I didn't even factor in something I read, but let me show it to you, which I think is significant, right? What did the guy with 1 talent do? What did he say? He's given an account. What does he do? He says he hid it in the earth and he says what? Lo, thou hast thine. So what did he do? He's now ready to give the Lord the talent back. So what does that also show you? It confirms the point I'm making, that he had the opportunity anytime he wanted to go to the land where he buried that talent to raise it up. This is even more reason why the judgment that came on him was justified. Because no one will be able to say to the Lord when he comes back, you didn't give me time, you gave me too much work, or I was not able to utilize the talents that you actually had given me. And no one can turn around and say, you didn't give me any talents. God gives to everyone according to their ability to start. And as we continue to progress, God can add additional, right? If I had handled this the way I should have 10 years ago, what would have happened? I'll be in a position today where I may not have to think about this as much as I need to think about it right now. And that would give me time to focus on other things that I would be able to do for God's kingdom. This is another reason why it makes sense to start early. When God is giving you these things and giving you the resources to handle them, you should do them at the time, because it's really significant in regards to these things. I'll even share something with you, okay, from this book, which I think is actually interesting. It's not specifically on this particular topic, but it applies, right? It's early in the book. And it's in the introduction, if I remember correctly, and I write something which is really interesting. It's basically me talking about something my dad used to say to me, okay, regularly when I was young. I'll just read it to you quickly, and then I'll basically apply it to this context right now, because he wasn't saying this to me at a time in the context of like your talents in regards to like Christianity, being a believer, right? And this is what I wrote. I said, my dad said to me when I was young on occasions, quotation marks, it is better to do things when you are young, end quotations. Then I also said, he also told me, quotations, you do not want to do things you could have done when you are young, when you are old. Those quotations, right? And that was just basically just a general principle my dad was giving me, okay, when I was young. Basically just telling me about, look, there's things that you should do right now. And I go into a couple of different examples like education, socializing techniques, the list goes on, right? And ultimately, he was basically just generally just talking about general stuff in life. It wasn't necessarily geared towards Christianity, but the principle applies. It's the principle that I've kind of explained to you so far in today's video in regards to what we've covered so far in regards to the talents, in regards to the things we can do in life. I could have done this 10 years ago. I could be on book number 10, for example. And I could have 10 books out there that I know that I'm giving these 10 books away for free to people that can't afford it, but I know it can still bless. But there's also people out there that you say, you know what? Israel's doing a lot of work for God's kingdom. Let me support him by buying a physical copy. Let me just buy it because I've got the resources. This guy is sound in his theology, his doctrine, and let me just support him in that way. Who knows? These are all the different scenarios that one may not be able to experience if you never do the scenarios. Why is this significant, and why have I harped on this for so long? The reason I talk about this for so long is because we today, a lot of us, we're complainers. We complain. I find myself complaining sometimes. God, look, I believe you blessed me so much in regards to teaching, but why don't I get to teach thousands of people? And I'll look left and I'll look right and I'll say, so-and-so teaches 1,000 people every time he's on a live stream. So-and-so teaches 500 people, 300 people. And again, I've already said in today's live stream already, look, don't focus on other people. That's the first thing, the first mistake that I've made in the past. But the second thing is, what have I warranted? What have I done that warrants me being entrusted with that many people? Case in point, God can testify and say, look, I can show you that, look, if I give you something, let's say I give you 1,000 people to teach on a live stream, are you going to do what you did with this book? And you'll put a little bit of the work in, and then after a little while, you'll disappear, you won't follow through. So what will become of the 1,000 sheep I entrust with you? And these are the things that we have to think about, because certain times it's easy to look around and say, well, why does so-and-so have this? Why does so-and-so have that? But have those people been entrusted and been trustworthy? Why does this is powerful with the parable so far? Because in the parable, what did Jesus say? He gave one person 5, he gave one person 2, he gave one person 1. And when he came back from the long journey, what did he say to those people? You can see right here. Well done, good and faithful servant. What? You have been faithful over the few things, the 5 things that I gave you, and you've made 10, right? In total. I will make you ruler over many things. So here's the principle. Here's the concept. If you want more talents, if you want God to use you more mightily, observe and analyze and look at what you've done with what God has given you. The books God's given you to write, the sermons God's given you to preach, the Bible teachings God's given you to teach, the alms God requires for you to give, basically given to the poor. Not to boast, not to do this like brashly and to be doing this in pride. No, Jesus earlier in the book of Matthew, in Matthew's gospel, condemns that kind of practice. What else? To the person that had 2 talents, what did he say? Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over few things. What did he say? I will make you ruler over many things. That's what he says here. I'll make you ruler over many things, right? So notice this. Notice the concept that we're realizing here. It will be silly. It will be foolish in a lot of ways for God to give something to someone that is too much for them. Doesn't this very parable explain that to you? It shows you that, look, God won't entrust you with more than you can handle. Why? Because it will be a problem for you, but it will also be a problem for the people he's entrusting to you. And there's a problem. But as you continue to show God more and more, that you know what, God, I'm not only in tune with what you're doing with me, I'm willing, I'm faithful, I'm in servitude here for your kingdom, not for me. Okay? People out there will look at you and say, well, why would you do this? Why would you give this away for free? Why? Because my God doesn't work on just the basis of you do things for people and you're doing things to receive something in return. Why? Because I know God has got me. Okay? I have to learn to trust God more and more and more. Because at the end of the day, what am I actioning out in this example? There's people out there that will say, well, God, you know what? How did you help me become successful financially? But how did you help me become successful financially? But how did you help me grow closer to you? How did you help me apply the things in the Bible to the day I live in today? How did you help me see that I shouldn't just focus on money? How did you help me realize and see, you know what, that this is about something bigger than rewards, okay? And stuff like this. This is an example by one of God's servants saying, look, take this for free. There's no excuse. Some of you will turn around and say, I don't want to buy a book. Why do I want to buy a book? I don't want to support you. For whatever reason. That's irrelevant. there's no excuse. Not from me anyway. Not from my vantage point. Why? Because I've given it to you for free. At a bare minimum, the worst case scenario, you can't say, well, you know what? I wanted these things, and this is just another example of God showing me that, look, I gave you this stuff for free. And it's whether or not you actually utilized it or not. God gives us the Bible, right? You can see it right here. We literally open this up pretty much every live stream without fail. This is free. We can pick this up at any moment on a computer, on a mobile device, in physical form, on a tablet, right? We can do this. We can utilize this under any circumstance. We have no excuse. There's no excuse. Okay? We have an option here to do these kind of things. Okay? Now, we're not talking about the wise and virgins and the foolish virgins in this parable, Franda. We're talking about the parable of the talents, okay, which comes right after it. So notice this. You can see this, right? We'll all be able to stand before God at one point when he returns and say, you know what, Lord, I knew everything. I remember when I was on this live stream with Israel and he was teaching me about this. I knew when I was reading in XYZ's book, I knew when I was watching TV about something that I knew was just a waste of my time or wasn't really helping me utilize my talents, was actually helping me bury my talents. I knew all of these different times, and I knew you would actually require of me all of these situations, but I did nothing. And the Lord can even say to you, well, you didn't even get interest, a little bit of interest. We know today interest is very, 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 very small. Jesus is saying, look, you didn't even take it to the exchanges to get a little bit of interest. You didn't even do anything. You wasted it. You just threw it in the ground. Now, this is only half of the parable. I said that already. But it's important we continue so you can see additionally what Jesus says about it, which I think is really significant, right? So after he says, look, cast out that unprofitable, that wicked and slothful servant, right, who was unfaithful, into outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. What does he say? He gives you more context. He says, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory, talking about when he's returning, right? And all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. And what should I do? And what shall he do? He says, and before him shall be gathered all nations. Everyone's going to be gathered to him. Okay, everyone is going to be gathered from all nations. And what is going to happen? And he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd does what? Divideth sheep from the goats. So the shepherds out there will know that, look, you partition your flock from the sheep and the goats. You don't put them together. One is one thing, another is another thing. You separate them. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Just like he did in the parable. Good and faithful, or should I, right hand, good and faithful. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with the few that you've had. I will make you rule over many things. Enter into the joy of the Lord. Okay, the sheep. The sheep that hear his voice, as Jesus says in John's account of the gospel, right? On the left side is going to be goats. Wicked and slothful servant. You have been unprofitable in what I gave you when you could have done something, even a little bit with it. You stay on this side and enter into outer darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth, is what he says, right? They're separated in the initial outline of the parable. Now what he's saying also adds additional context to what he's basically saying. Now he's becoming even more practical and is giving it to you more graphically. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, come, blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Heaven isn't some knee-jerk reaction. Heaven is a place. God's glory, God's kingdom is a place that God has planned for you before he even laid the foundation of the world. Why does he say these people on the right should come to him? Notice he gives you additional context. in regards to the parable. Even though everyone by here checks out right here. Most people who do searches check out here. But he actually gives you more additional context here, which is actually beneficial what we're talking about. Now, why does he say these people go in? He says, because for I was an hungered and you gave me meat. So you fed me. He says, I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you took me in. Naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. In prison, I was in prison and you came unto me. Now notice what he's saying here. He just unpacked people with talents and they multiplied their talents. They duplicated their talents. And there was a person who had one talent and didn't do anything. Now what is Jesus saying here in this example? Saying that, look, these people, what did they do? He now gives practical examples. He was hungry and you gave me meat. I was thirsty, you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you took me in. I was naked and you clothed me. Sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came unto me. Why is this significant? Because Jesus has given us examples here of how and what the talents were. Now what happens? Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered and fed, or thirsty and gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger and took thee in, or naked and clothed? Or when saw we thee sick or in prison and came unto thee? So when did we do all of these things, Lord? Is what the righteous are going to say. Jesus says in the parable. And what does Jesus say? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, truly I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have made let me read that again. And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done unto one of the least of these, my brethren. Remember, the weak, right? People that need help. Ye have done unto me. So what does that mean inadvertently to the people that didn't do these things? Jesus explains as he goes further. Then shall he say unto them on the left. Then shall he say unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire. Prepared for who? This place wasn't prepared for you. It was prepared for the devil and his angels. We did a whole playlist on just hell as we reference it today, ultimately the lake of fire. The lake of fire is what we're really just talking about when we generally say hell, okay, in that context. You can check it on our channel. Go to our channel page, go to our playlist. You can see a whole playlist on eternal punishment, right? You want to get our view on it. But notice, you go and get judged. Why? In the parable of the talents earlier, the guy said, look, I knew that you would require this of me. Now, even though I knew, I still went and buried it. So it's just for you to get punished, right? And what does he say next? Why are you going to be put in everlasting fire where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth prepared for the devil and his angels? Okay, eternal punishment. An eternal punishment for an eternal, someone who is created eternal. He was not always eternal, but the devil, angels, okay, they're created to be eternal, right? So God created them, so they were not always eternal like God is, but He created them in the situation where they're not supposed, where they don't die, basically. So that everlasting punishment is for them. But ultimately, the unprofitable, the wicked, and the slothful that take God's gifts and don't utilize them, even worse, bury them in the sand. You go there as well. Why? Because I was an hungered and you gave me not meat. For I was an hungered and you gave me no meat. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger and you took me not in. Naked and you clothed me not. Sick and in prison and you visited me not. Okay? So notice this. There's people that are hungry And for the 10 years, I didn't make this available to people for free. I wasn't feeding people. I wasn't helping people drink. I wasn't clothing people. I wasn't visiting people. Okay? These are all the scenarios. This is just one example. This is one book. Think about the people I may have supposed to have a conversation with, or the people that my videos that I may have produced would have been able to bless. Why is this significant? Because once you give things away for free, once you go and do things for people, there's people that may come out of the woodwork. There's people that down the line may see me on the street, may see me online and message me and say, you know what? I was in a pickle, you know, and something you did blessed me and helped me transform my life. And it's not because I'm special. It's not because of me. It's because I was pointing you to the one that can change your life drastically. Okay? So in the context is, God, how did I help these people? Well, look, there's people out there that are starving. There's people out there that need you to deliver the message that I have. And by you not delivering the message, that means now I have to take from you and give to someone else who's being faithful. This is why in a lot of categories, there's people out there that have big followings. I want to preface that statement by, I'll qualify that statement by saying this. Not everyone with a big audience fits the bill of what I'm talking about. There's people that have amassed a big audience through connivery and trickery and deceit, right? The Lord will deal with those in the way he sees fit. But there are genuine people doing genuine good work for God's kingdom, utilizing those talents, right? And they multiplied. Why? Because the person with one talent, the person with 2 talents, what happened? He was rewarded ultimately. He got to 4 talents. If he had 4 talents, what does that mean he could do? He could ultimately get to 8 talents and then 16 talents. He could continue to increase and move forward. As long as he had time on earth to realize the reward, he could continue to progress. Because it's just a natural law of sowing and reaping that God set out from Genesis, right? So when we think about this from that scenario, what does it tell us? It shows us that, look, we all have talents. God has started us all on a level playing field relative to what we can manage, what we can bear. And some of us may have 5 talents to start. And because we do not utilize those talents, we go and bury them in the sand. Now those talents get taken. Maybe God takes one of those talents and says, you know what? The 5 talents you started with, you're wasting them. Give one of those talents to someone else who had 5 talents. Now he's got 6 because he's been faithful. Okay? People talk a lot today in investing circles about what we call compound interest, right? It's the magical formula, the magical substance, some people say, to get wealth. This is an example of where those kind of principles come from. Why? Because the Bible has shown you this very clearly. As you continue to do or not to do, God reacts on your behavior. Okay? But God's gone on a long journey. That's a sign of God's grace. He goes on a long journey and gives you more than enough time. So when you come back, he's just if he convicts you, either way. If he convicts you the right way, then he's just. If he convicts you in the way that you will deem as wrong, in a way that you don't like, he's just. Why? Because your own works will testify against you and show you and condemn you to destruction. Why is this significant? The question that can arise is, well, are you saying to me, Israel, that we just have to focus on our works? No. Why? Because this is why the parable is so powerful. Because it gives you a practical example. Both of them are practical. But it gives you like a general example. There's talents, 5, 2, 1. Then it gives you an example. You went and did this, you went and did this, you went and did this. But why do you go and do all of these things? Why would you as a Christian now go and give someone food who's hungry, or give someone a drink who's thirsty, or take someone in who's a stranger, or visit someone who's sick, or visit someone in prison. Why would you do those things? Because Jesus sent us out. He commissioned us to go out in the name of love. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, or might, however you want to render it, right? Love the Lord God and love your neighbor as you love yourself. Christ entrusted that commandment to us. He said, on these two commandments hang the whole law. So for those of you that are hell-bent on keeping the 10 commandments and keeping all of the 613 or 616 laws as they calculate and say there are in the Old Testament, God made this very simple for you. Follow these two laws. If you follow these two laws of love, this covers everything. When you see someone in need of food, the love that Jesus Christ exemplified for us, will say to you, look, feed that person. When you see someone struggling to understand the Bible and you know the Bible, what do? You feed that person. You don't just walk away and say, you know what, forget that person, let them come to their own devices, etc. No, you turn around and you say, how can I help that person? How can I walk in love? We've done multiple videos in recent months about love. Go back on our channel, you can watch them all. They'll be very beneficial to you. Practical examples, but also the theoretical examples from the scriptures to show you this. So you can see this obviously from the scripture, but you can also see this from a practical example as well. Okay? Me giving this to you for free is a practical example of love. Why? Because the world will tell you, don't give things away for free, sell it, make money. And yes, there is a paid option. Why? Because it costs money in the world we live in to actually put the paper together, print on it, and ship it out, right? But then at the same time, you can read the New Testament and you can see that, look, there's people in the church that don't want to give for whatever reason. And I don't want those people to have an excuse. Not from me anyway. I want you to realize and say, look, you know what? If we can make this available to you in one way, shape, or form, so you can be without excuse and you can say, you know what? I used these materials, I was able to access these materials because Israel allowed me to utilize these things for free. Why? Because he received them for free. Yeah, maybe I paid some people along the way different things. Maybe I paid for a conference on biblical wisdom, or maybe on marriage, or maybe on punctuality, sorry, should I say, or how to study the Bible. Yeah, maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Either way, all of these things are from the Lord anyway. The Lord can see my heart ultimately. Okay? And that's what's most important. If you think about it from that perspective, notice how he unpacks the parable for us. Remember what I said earlier on in today's video to start? The parables I love most about Jesus, the ones I think are the most powerful, are the ones where he literally explains them for you. It's mind-boggling in a lot of ways how Christ can explain a parable and people still think it's hard to understand. But also at the same time, if he doesn't explicitly explain it, the parables where he gives you additional context, for example, like this parable, is powerful as well. Okay? Why? Because he gives you no excuse. You can't say you don't understand the parable of the talent because he gives you an example. He shows you exactly what he's talking about. Now, how does he conclude this? He says, likewise with the other people that said, when did we do these things? These people will say, look, Lord. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, or athirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? So when did we have these opportunities to minister? Then shall he answer them, saying, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did not to the one, then shall he answer them, saying, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did not to one of the least of these, did not to me. Why is this significant? Because when you get to John's epistle, right, the first epistle of John, he outlines this very clearly. Okay, and he says something really powerful. And I believe James in his epistle touches on this as well. All right? John is basically talking about love. And what does he say? He says, how can you say you love if you don't, the God you don't see? If you, so how can you love, how can you say you love the God you don't see if you don't love the people you do see? Okay. Now, look at this. If a man say what? If a man say, I love God and hate if his brother, he is a liar. Why? For he that loveth not his brother whom he hath seen, how can he love God whom he hath not seen? And this commandment have we from him, that he who loveth God loveth his brother also. What did I just say previously? I just said previously that God commissions Christians to go out and love God with everything that we have. And this is why we can toil for God and give stuff away for free that God says, you know what, distribute out. Why? Because the love of God, the love that we have for God is more important. This is why he commissioned us to go out and love our neighbors. We love these people around us. Why? Because it's a sign, it's a token, it's a show that we love God in heaven that we haven't seen, that we'll see one day. Now, why is this significant? It's significant for a number of reasons, but you can see how the parable wraps up very succinctly. But he stacks two examples on top of each other to give you the same example, right? There's talents that we all have. And what we have to do in these scenarios is we have to utilize them. Now, I mentioned this in these live streams about these a month ago, right? Oh, okay. I mentioned this. This was an example I gave in this live stream, and I was saying, look, this is a journal. This is a journal, okay, from years and years ago that had the book cover, the cover design for this book. So for 10 years, this cover was in here, catching dust. I mentioned previously, the book was catching dust in the east space, right? The book, the manuscript, was also catching dust here. Okay. This is why it's significant. Let me end on this. I'll show you this, right? If I can find this quickly, I'll give you a quick example. But the fact of the matter is, the thing I'm trying to show you here is we are without excuse. We are seriously without excuse. Let me show you this very quickly, right? I'll show you the image. I'll show you the date. And I'll show you something after as well, which kind of ties this up, because with everything, there's excuses. Everyone can make an excuse about everything, whether we're justified or not. We just read it in the parable, right, of the example, right? Everyone will come and bring their own excuse, even though we know our excuse is warranted. Even though we know excuses true. So what I want to show you, basically get to the page. In fact, maybe it's actually the early parts of this are basically in the same. Now the reason I want to show you this is it shows you excuses, right? When you see this, long as you're able to see it, like at least to a decent standard, you see exactly what. Because I make allusions to this. But look, this was 8 years ago. 7th of January 2012. Look at this right here. You see this? What did I say? You can see here it says a blackboard. There's a teacher and there's 6 students in the class, and it says the title on the blackboard, right? That's what you can see right there. Notice how terrible that is. But why is this significant? The reason that's significant is because we live in a world where we can't make excuses. Blackboard, title, teacher, 6 students. Okay, 8 years later, 8 years and a bit later, since we're in the 5th month of this year, right? But why did I show you this? I showed you the image first because I mentioned this multiple times, right? From time to time, like, look, like, I'm not, art was not my favorite subject. All I basically did is I basically drew out what I believed God was showing me that the book cover was supposed to look like. I just gave a rough example. Why? Because I know I can take this to someone who is skilled in this realm and can produce something that envisions or shows what I envisioned. The reason I say that is there's no excuse, because I can draw this terrible drawing just to kind of get the concept, and I can say, look, today I can say, look, can you make this for me? And I can go and find someone and make it. And look, this is in physical form. In order to have this book published like this, it cost a very small amount of money. To have the book cover designed, to have the book formatted, it costs very little money. I'm not permitted to tell you how much at this present time, so I'm not going to say it. Okay, but it's very small amount of money. So for those of you, well, God, I'm not a designer. I don't know how to outline or design a book layout. There's people out there that we have that can do these things for you. But don't squander the talents you have. Why did I say this? I showed you this so you can see, for example, look, 2012, 7th of January 2012, 8 years ago, 8+ years ago. And I turned around recently and said, you know what? I'm not trying to waste my talents anymore. Okay? I'm not going to be continually petitioning God, saying, God, why is my life like this in this realm? Why haven't I excelled to where I want to get to in this stuff? When I'm not doing the things that will propel me to excel, to show myself good and faithful in God's eyes to the best of my capabilities. Yeah, you know what? Jesus said, look, you can do interest. In some areas, I was just doing interest just enough, right? Getting a little bit of like return. But God requires much more than me than interest. I know that for myself. I don't want to be someone that is just interested in just doing just a basic amount for God's kingdom, when I know God has empowered me and entrusted me to do so much more. I want to pass the test God has outlaid for me with flying colors. I don't want to just scrape by and just get in. Okay? So when you think about it from this perspective, hopefully this parable, from a theoretical standpoint, as we walked through it, has been beneficial to you. Hopefully the practical examples I've given you, and I believe God has encouraged me to share with you today, can also be of benefit to you and be impactful to you. The underlying message is, look, as long as you still have time to breathe, you can think with your mind, you have time. Okay? Don't squander it. You still have time today to move forward. I mentioned this previously, we've got a whole parable series. You can watch it right here. It's in the description box as well. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks and take care.